Opened a couple reviews where the host finally got a haircut, so things were getting a little bit out of hand in the last few videos. There's a very big reason why the prequel trilogy isn't as bad as the sequel trilogy. Don't get me wrong, the prequels are bad movies, horrible movies in fact. But the prequel trilogy at least establishes a lot of world building that would be used in other Star Wars content. The prequels brought new factions, explored what the Jedi were like before the events of the original trilogy, and introduced characters that would be better written elsewhere. The prequels don't justify the prequel's existence, the Clone Wars justifies the prequel's existence. I can't wish the prequels never happened because that would mean that the Clone Wars along with several video games never happened either. Nothing justifies the sequel trilogy's existence, I would wish them away in a heartbeat. But that's a story for another day. Today is about Anakin and Padme. The first film has them meeting at the ages of 9 and 14. They're supposed to build up a fondness that lasts until they reunite years later when they're both adults. But this film doesn't properly set up the level of fondness that exists in the beginning of the second film. Jar Jar distracts from their first meeting with his slapstick, and there's not many scenes with them together after that.
I don't fully understand. This is a strange place to me.
No, Misa stay.
What?
Misa called Jar Jar Binks. Misa your humble servant.
Misa caused maybe one or two little accidents.
You'd say, boom to gasser, then crash into buses, hey blibber, then vanish.
You're a funny little boy.
I'm a person, and my name is Anakin.
I'm glad to have met you, Anakin.
I was glad to meet you too.
Sure, there's a scene where Padme consoles him, and I understand this is a welcome stark contrast to the cold presences in his life, but we're expected to believe that these interactions led him to still be completely obsessed with her 10 years later. At the start of episode 2, he talks about how he's thought about her every day.
I haven't seen her in 10 years, Master.
Annie? My goodness, you've grown.
So have you. Grown more beautiful, I mean. Well, for a senator, I mean.
Annie, you'll always be that little boy I knew on Tatooine.
A lot of episode 2 is spent with Anakin and Padme building their relationship. That sounds like it should make them a compelling couple, but what they're doing is uninteresting and their dialogue is horrific.
If Master Obi-Wan caught me doing this, he'd be very grumpy.
These scenes are so boring. It was just a mistake to make Padme a politician because it ties her to the most boring aspect of the prequel trilogy, the political drama.
A tragedy has occurred,
which started right here with the taxation of trade routes.
This is outrageous! I object to the Senator's statements!
Into the bureaucrats, the true rulers of the Republic, and on the payroll of a trade federation, I might add.
Padme is too often kept away from the war, and thus she keeps the film away from the war.
I guess it's outrageous. Trade federations and commerce guilds.
A lot of people wonder why Padme would like Anakin because there's nothing appealing about him. The funny thing is, Anakin is presented as if he has attractive qualities, but these qualities are so poorly written that it feels like there's nothing to him but angst. Anakin makes Padme laugh, but his jokes are never good enough to actually make the audience laugh.
You really don't like politicians, do you?
I like 2 or 3, but I'm not really sure about one of them.
It almost seems like George Lucas asked a good writer how to get the audience invested in a romantic relationship. He wrote down everything he was told, and then he just failed every step in execution. Anakin and Padme want to be with each other, but the Jedi forbid their members to have attachments, and Padme is a politician, which, it would be bad for her reputation if she was dating a Jedi, I guess. It doesn't really make sense for her to worry about her reputation. Just because the Jedi take issue with attachments, that doesn't mean the rest of the galaxy cares. Would you care if someone from a different religion broke their vow of celibacy?
If you follow your thoughts through to conclusion, it'll take us to a place we cannot go. regardless of the way we feel about each other.
You are asking me to be rational. That is something I know I cannot do. We could keep it a secret.
I couldn't do that. Could you, Anakin? Could you live like that?
No. You're right. It would destroy us.
Funny story, it does. The criticisms about Anakin's anger issues are valid.
I killed them all. Every single one of them. And not just the men, but the women and the children too. They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals.
Now do not tell me that I don't understand the brilliance of it all. I get what's going on here. Padme's failure to react properly to Anakin's anger is part of what turns Anakin to the dark side.
To be angry is to be human.
I'm a Jedi. I know I'm better than this.
What Anakin needed was someone with a spine to tell him when he's acting crazy, but he got Padme, so he ends up killing younglings. This fuels his journey to the dark side, but for many that was outweighed by the fact that this scene makes their relationship so unappealing.
Please don't look at me like that.
Why not?
It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Sorry, milady.
After getting themselves captured, Anakin and Padme kiss, thinking that they don't need to worry about their reputations because they're about to die anyway. Unfortunately, they don't die, and they decide not to backpedal on the kissing. So they get married? Sure, why not? That women and children thing isn't the only way Padme turns Anakin into a monster. Her insistence on keeping their marriage a secret prevents him from seeking help and drives him to resent those he keeps the secret from.
Do you think Obi-Wan might be able to help us?
We don't need his help.
I think there's two different possible reasons why Anakin turns to the dark side that the film is trying to present. It kind of looks like Anakin fell to the dark side because of his attachments, but really I think Anakin fell to the dark side because he wasn't allowed to be open about those attachments. The views of the Jedi are warped and cold and take a heavy toll on those who suffer their practices. Anakin gets visions of Padme dying and he'll do anything to keep that from happening. He talks with Yoda about his visions, but he's very vague about who's dying. Yoda's advice does not help at all. He basically tells him to rejoice in the death.
Death is a natural part of life. Rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force. Mourn them do not. Miss them do not.
There's an episode of Star Wars: The Clone Wars where Ahsoka gets visions of Padme dying. The difference is that Ahsoka makes no secret to her concerns and openly accompanies Padme for protection. Ultimately, the Emperor was able to turn Anakin into a Sith by pretending to fill the needs that Padme forced on him. Anakin's fall to the dark side is too rushed, though. You see him go from the Republic's finest hero to a child butcher pretty quickly. Once Padme sees the monster that Anakin has become, she's horrified and he force chokes her, knocking her out. Padme dies later out of sadness. This scene has been criticized a lot. I'm not a doctor, but I know you can die from stress-related heart attacks, which can be caused by a broken heart. But I still have to call shenanigans. There's one reason I can't defend this film against the criticism of having a girl die of heartbreak. If Padme can die from losing Anakin, why can't Anakin die from losing Padme? He knows she's dead, and he rightfully blames himself for it. On top of that, Anakin was just burned after losing several limbs. Plus, Padme had more to live for. The medical droid tells us that the reason she's dying is because she's lost the will to live, and a mother who just gave birth to 2 twins has no business not having the will to live. Why is it that Padme can be killed by a lack of will to live when she has 2 babies, while Anakin survives dismemberment, burning, and a lot more sadness? He's lost everything and now he's in servitude to an emperor he hates. This relationship is terrible. So how would I fix this relationship? First of all, Padme should have been a Jedi, and no, it's not for the reason you're thinking. Padme is usually either taking focus away from the fun stuff, or being left out of the fun stuff. If she was a Jedi, she could have bonded with Anakin during battles and missions more often, instead of sitting around in meetings and talking about sand. Second of all, the whole Chosen One thing is gobbledygook and I hate it. All that rubbish about Anakin being a random slave they stumbled upon who happened to have the strongest Force potential, get rid of it. They already had a better way for Anakin to be a Jedi that would have given him a perfectly legitimate reason to betray the Order. Most Jedi are taken away from their families at such a young age that they won't even remember their parents. And then they're forced into strict training and ridiculous rules. That's reason enough for anyone to turn into a supervillain. Instead, the film we actually got gave Anakin a backstory where he should have been grateful to the Jedi for releasing him from slavery. So Anakin and Padme should have both been Jedi, taken from their families at a young age, and stifled by the Order's policies on attachments. The Order finds out about their relationship as well as Padme's pregnancy, and they force Padme to stay at a military base until they decide how to punish her. It's actually there that Padme gives birth to Luke and Leia. Then there's an attack on the base. Padme, being a Jedi, holds off the enemy forces while the babies are evacuated by a trusted ally. Having gone through labor only a day ago, Padme can only fight for so long before she's gunned down. Anakin finds out that she died because she was forced to stay there by the dogmatic Jedi, and he's ready to destroy the entire Order. That would have made Darth Vader a much more sympathetic villain, and put his actions in a different light. Joining the Empire and destroying the Jedi would have been something he did in Padme's honor, as opposed to spitting on everything she stood for. One day I'll review Han and Leia, and one day I'll review Rey and Kylo Ren. But that won't be today. In fact, that won't be next time, but we'll get to them eventually. You of course have nothing but positive things to say about Han and Leia, right? Well... right? I mean, you can't say anything bad about the original trilogy. Would you look at the time? We better wrap this up. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and pretend the sequel trilogy isn't canon.